Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk with Rags here in Season 3, Episode 39. And today, here we are honored here by having Great Bridge alum and Major League Baseball veteran Michael Cuddyer with us. Michael, how you doing this morning?
Rags, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. Hey, let's start at the beginning here. What was it? What was it like here growing up? Did you play all sports, and then just as you were getting older, just found the liking there to baseball, or how was it growing up?
Sure. Well, I grew up here in Chesapeake in the Great Bridge area. Was born in Norfolk, lived there for about my first 4 or 5 years of life, and then moved over to Chesapeake and went through all Great Bridge schools. So I was Great Bridge at the time, elementary, Great Bridge Intermediate, which then turned into Great Bridge Middle School, and then went to Great Bridge Junior High, which then turned into Great Bridge Middle School South. Then
Right.
went to obviously Great Bridge High School, and no, growing up was great. Played everything. Started off playing in the Chesapeake Rec League, soccer. Played soccer up until I was about 11. Played basketball in the rec league, baseball in Great Bridge Baseball Association. Wrestled in middle school. I wrestled my sixth, seventh, and eighth grade year. Then went back to basketball in high school. Played football, basketball, and baseball in high school, and I knew I was best at baseball. I think it was what I had the passion to play was baseball, but it didn't take away the fact that I loved playing sports as well, especially basketball. I loved playing basketball. I loved wrestling. Wrestling really taught me a lot about myself, taught me a lot of self discipline. Um, I was in the program where Stevie Martin was the head coach uh, at Great Bridge High School at the time, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to invest the time and effort that required to be a Great Bridge wrestler, nationally ranked team. So I went back to playing basketball, but I always tell Stevie, I tell everybody, anybody who will listen, if I didn't wrestle those 3 years at those formative ages of my life, I don't know if I would have made it to the major leagues just because of how much introspect it gave me and taught me what I can deal with and what I can push through. And I attribute a lot of my success to those 3 years of wrestling.
Right. Well, I know that with my brother and I growing up here at Western Branch, my brother Mike Ragsdale graduating in 91. I graduated in 94, grew up with Jimmy Anderson. So definitely with you growing up in Great Bridge, I mean, not only with Western Branch, Great Bridge wrestling, but definitely Western Branch and Great Bridge baseball. Definitely a great rivalry here in the Southeastern District.
No doubt. My freshman year was Jimmy's senior year, your senior year as well. And we battled him. He got us. I think he got us two out of the three of those matchups. I think he got us in Western Branch, and I think he beat us in the Southeastern District tournament. But we got him at our place at Great Bridge, and probably, and I still tell people to this day, top three, top five games I've ever played in, and that includes the World Series. That includes the playoff games that I played in. Game 163, that game at Great Bridge, I believe we went 10 innings.
Wow.
Jimmy went nine. David Ellison, who was our starting pitcher, went nine. They both threw shutouts through nine. And I think you were only allowed to throw 9 innings at that time, or there was no pitch count, but I think it was innings, and you were only allowed to throw nine innings. So they both came out. I think Jimmy had like 16 strikeouts. David had maybe 12 or 13 strikeouts, and we ended up walking Western Branch off in the 10th inning, 1-0, I believe. And it was just an unbelievable game. The excitement. Me being a freshman, it was kind of a welcome to varsity moment. Um, and obviously facing Jimmy, who was ninth round pick that year, who was just all world. It was fun to be able to say I competed against him at that time.
Right. And also with Great Bridge Baseball, I mean, Coach Oliver. I mean,
Yeah.
that definitely with leading the Great Bridge baseball program there in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, Coach Oliver and Coach Stanko obviously was at Western Branch at that time. Coach Oliver was great to me. He really, really was. Gave me a chance to play as a freshman. Um, I was a starting pitcher. Then I worked my way into being the starting shortstop. And the lessons that Coach Oliver taught me were instrumental in my life. I remember one time I was on second base. I got to second base somehow. I don't remember, but the inning was over, and I took my helmet off. And I wasn't mad or anything. I took my helmet off, just kind of tossed it to the dugout because the inning was over. I was going to run out to my position. And he kind of calls me over, and he's got his hat down, and he calls me over, and he's like, "Hey, we don't throw helmets at the varsity level. I don't know what they did in Little League, but we don't throw helmets at the varsity level." He said, "You can watch the rest of the game next to me here on the bench." So he took me out, and it really taught me a lesson at that age. And even to this day, I don't remember throwing a helmet even in the big leagues. I may have done it in the dugout or where people couldn't see, but on the field, I don't remember throwing my helmet in anger. And that's all because of Coach Oliver.
Right. Yes. And I started the apprenticeship in February of 97. So there when your senior year, the baseball season came out there in spring of 97, went to a game at Western Branch that you guys came over and played and stood with Mr. Gaines, who was a Spanish teacher there at Western Branch, and then was a AP there at Great Bridge.
Yeah, and I can't say I regret it because there was no choice in the matter. But I'm sad I did not get a chance to spend more time with Mr. Gaines. But as you mentioned, he was there as an assistant principal my senior year, and I was the student body president that year. So I got an opportunity to really spend quite a bit of time with the principals and the faculty at Great Bridge High School. And he really made an impact on me in just that short amount of time. Just the care that he took. He listened to the students. He gave thoughtful replies if you had questions. He asked thoughtful questions to make the students think and really think about themselves. And it was an honor to be with him and an honor to pick his brain. And still to this day, whenever I see him and see him around, he's one of those guys that he never demanded respect, but just by the way he carried himself and presented himself and communicated with you, he always commanded the most utmost respect from people. And that's a testament to who he is, the person that he is, and the person that he made you be when you talk to him.
Right. And one last here connection here between the Western Branch and Great Bridge baseball program. I mean, definitely another mutual friend here to both of us here is with Roland Wright, who took over after Coach Stanko stepped down.
Yeah, Roland's awesome, man. I've known Roland for a long, long time, and he's such a staple in the community. He's such a positive influence in baseball. He's constantly promoting the players in the area, constantly trying to make coaches and players better. Obviously, and he's self-admittedly rough around the edges, as he would call it. But it's all with a great heart, and I've got the utmost respect for Roland. A story with him back in 2003. Some buddies of mine, we made a poor decision to toilet paper his house in the middle of the night, and he ended up coming out, and obviously it was all white around his. We're 23 years old and still toilet paper in a house. That shows you the maturity level of us. But he didn't get upset. Just kind of played it off as a joke, and but we've got some funny times with Roland, and even now with the travel teams, we're partnering with our travel team and Tidewater Thunderbirds, and again, just trying to grow baseball in this area, and continue to try and impact these kids' lives. And he does a great job with that.
Right. And here it is, your senior year, the draft comes out, but reading an article here to prepare for the interview, I was reading where, there in June of '97, you just treated it like any old day, go to school, take a test, get ready for the state quarterfinal game. A lot different than how the draft is held today.
Right. The draft was not publicized. You could follow it online. But I mean, as a human being, we got obligations, right? And my obligation at the time was school. You have to go to school, and I had exams. It was in June. It was the last, 2 weeks of school, so we had exams, and I had to take my exam. You're not exempt from that just because you have a chance to get drafted in the major leagues. So I did. I was in class. I was taking my calculus exam, and Bob Robinson, who was the principal at Great Bridge at the time, we knew the draft started at 1 o'clock, which was right in the middle exam. So I knew it was going to happen going into the day. I just didn't know what time that was going to happen. And sure enough, Mr. Robinson knocked on the door with his walkie-talkie, called me out of the office, said, "Your mom's on the phone," brought me into his office, and my mom told me I was the 9th pick in the country and that the Minnesota Twins drafted me. And we shared a moment there on the phone. I shared a moment with Mr. Robinson and Miss Bernard, Carolyn Bernard, who was the AP at the time. Mm-hmm. And there's really, nothing else to do. So I went back to calculus and sat down and tried to continue to take the exam.
Yes. And, they're with the Minnesota Twins organization. Their spring training, facility down in Fort Myers. And, there at the time, the big league club ran by Tom Kelly, mm-hmm. So, just talk about here growing up there in the Minnesota organization and playing different positions. So when you got the call up there in 2001.
Sure. Well, when I was drafted, obviously baseball back then wasn't as prevalent on TV as it is now. There was no MLB network. There was no MLB.com. There was no package to be able to watch every game that you wanted to watch. So I didn't really know much about the Minnesota Twins. I wasn't really familiar with them. I knew they had won a World Series earlier in the 90s, earlier in the decade, but at that time they were not very good. In '97, they were the doormat of the American League Central at that time. So I wasn't, obviously I was ecstatic to be drafted, right, but I wasn't too ecstatic to be drafted by the Twins, and that was just because of my ignorance. I just didn't know anything about them. But you fast forward, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life was being drafted in my baseball life was being drafted by the Minnesota Twins, because with Terry Ryan as the general manager and Tom Kelly as the manager of the big club, they were really detail-oriented people. And that trickled down through the minor leagues to the field coordinator, who was a man named Larry Corrigan at the time. And they were really sticklers about how everything was supposed to look, and it was supposed to be professional. And they were trying to build that culture from the bottom up. And obviously it worked, because the class or generation right before me that made it up to the big leagues, Torrey Hunter, Doug Minkiewicz, Corey Koski, David Ortiz, those guys were kind of like the trailblazers as far as that culture was concerned. And it took a while. They took some hard knocks. '99 was a tough year for the Twins. I think they had 14 rookies, but what it ended up doing was laying that foundation of being detail oriented. So then when I came up to the big leagues in 2001, it was starting to shift. Had a really successful year. The Twins had a really successful year in 2001, but ended up losing the Central to the Indians. with Jim Thome, Manny Ramirez, Bruno Alomar, Ellis Burks, that crew. But then was able to get over the hump in 2002. And we then went on to win, I believe, six AL Central titles in the 9 years that I was able to play. And, and it was because of that early detail oriented focus that Terry Ryan and Tom Kelly put in place.
Right. And then after your time with Minnesota, then playing a couple years there for the Rockies.
Sure. And that was really tough for me. I had been with the Twins at the time, 14 years professionally, 11 years in the major leagues at that point, 11 seasons. And my wife, Claudia, and I, we really tried to entrench ourselves in the community there in Minneapolis. And we ended up having a lot of success in doing that and established a lot of tremendous relationships, not just within the Twins organization, but within the city of Minneapolis and whether it's charity work or just neighborhood friends. So having to leave was extremely difficult. But I mean, that's part of Major League Baseball. That's part of the business side that is kind of ugly at times. And we ended up not being able to come to an agreement to be able to sign back with them as a free agent. And Colorado was able to sign me and really valued what I brought not only on the field but off the field. Dan O'Dowd really endeared me to Colorado, and ended up going there and loving my 3 years in Colorado. I loved living in Denver. The team, we didn't have much success. We didn't have as much success as I thought we should have, or what our lineup said we should have. But individually, it was a great time. My daughters were born December prior to going to Colorado, so they kind of grew up their first 3 years there. It was kind of my son's formative years where he was really watching a lot of baseball. I mean, he was 4, 5, and 6 years old, but he watched every game every night at the field when we were home and on the TV when we were on the road. So, it was a very special time for me there, and ended up winning a batting championship and having some good individual success.
Yes, and then getting the opportunity to not only go be part of the All-Star festivities and at Citi Field, but also being part of the NL Home Run Derby there with another local guy, David Wright.
Yeah, and I'm forever indebted to David for selecting me, because he took a lot of ridicule for selecting me to be in the Home Run Derby and represent. And I think you take it back to 2008 when we were able to put together a Home Run Derby with some of the local players at Grassfield High School. I think it was David, Ryan Zimmerman, Mark Reynolds, BJ Upton, Melvin Upton, and Justin Upton and myself. And I ended up winning that. So I ended up taking those young bucks to school. And I think that made a lasting impression in David's mind, because, he was able to pick me. And fortunately, I was having a good year and kind of softened the critique that he was getting a little bit. But he did. He stuck his neck out on the line for me. And it was, I'm telling you, as far as individual experiences in the major leagues, for me, that is right up there. Probably a top 2 or 3 moments individually. I felt free. I wasn't nervous at all. I was excited. I think if it would have happened early in my career, I probably would have bombed and not done very well, because I would have put too much pressure on myself. But at that point in my career, I just lived it up and enjoyed it. And again, like I said, I'm forever indebted to him for sticking his neck out on line and picking me.
Yeah, so about that trip, my wife and I, we don't have any kids, so we took 2 of our nephews there for the All-Star festivities, and Roland, gave me a few Western Branch hats, for all of us to wear. And then Scott Bigby, said, "Hey, Mark, get there as early as you can," but I was just amazed on just the amount. Not only was it New York City, but just how much media coverage was around the All-Stars. I mean, it wasn't postseason. It definitely wasn't the World Series, but I texted Scott back. I said, we couldn't get close to Michael and David here with the media coverage there. Not only was it in New York City.
No, for those events, it's incredible, man. It's really as a player, it's kind of difficult because there's really nowhere to stretch or get loose or breathe or swing the bat. During the season around the batting cage, you're used to being able to just mindlessly move the bat and swing the bat around. But during those events, there's just no room. And if you're any bit of claustrophobic, it's a tough atmosphere. The All-Star game is very similar to the World Series when it comes to media. And yeah, it's just a lot of hype that surrounds it. And you better get used to it real quick.
Right. And then before you hung up the cleats, you were also able to be teammates there with David with playing there with the Mets.
Right. And, when I became a free agent in Colorado, they have what's called a qualifying offer, which depending on the type of free agent you were, the team that would sign you would lose a draft pick. And they had about a week to 10 days after the season was over to decide if they were going to extend you the qualifying offer. And at that point, I only played like 50 games that year. I was hurt. I broke my shoulder. I didn't think I was going to be extended the qualifying offer, which is a 1-year deal. Very similar to a franchise tag somewhat in football. But right after the season was over, there was pretty much every team seemed interested in giving me a call. David was the first person to call to kind of petition for the Mets for me to come there. And then once the qualifying offer got extended, they were all quiet. It was crickets because, none of the teams were going to take a chance and lose the draft pick on a 34-year-old that was just coming off of an injury-riddled season. But the Mets were still there. And I think a lot of that had to do with the belief that David had in me. And, I jumped at the opportunity. I wanted to be closer to home. I knew I was in the latter part of my career. I wanted to be on the East Coast so I could get flights to here in Virginia quicker because my son was in school at the time, so they couldn't travel with me. So it ended up working out. And plus, I had faced the Mets obviously the year before and knew what that pitching staff was capable of and knew what that team and the direction that team was going. So I was excited about that as well. And lo and behold, that pitching staff carried us the whole year and carried us ultimately with a few really good trades with Cespedes and Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe, along with that pitching staff, ended up taking us to the World Series and the playoff heroics of Daniel Murphy.
Right. Yes. And Michael, I mean, getting back here with you talking about, connecting with the community, you bring up that 2008, home run derby. And then my wife, Elizabeth, her and I, we've also participated in y'all's back to school drive, that you had in the community. So, just now that you're done playing, just staying connected to the community and giving back. I see on June 12th, with being involved here with the All Tidewater baseball game at Old Dominion.
Right. Well, look, this is my home. It's always been my home. I spent all my off seasons back here in Chesapeake and in Hampton Roads, Tidewater area. I don't plan on leaving. My wife, even though she's from Northern Virginia, we kind of adopted her, and she's been incredible in entrenching herself in the community and Chesapeake public school system. She worked at Hickory. She was a teacher at Hickory High School before we had met. But this is our home, and this community has meant so much to me and supported me throughout my career, not just my professional career, but my amateur career. And they just care about one another, and I care about them, and I care about, and I'm proud of the baseball players, not just because of the talent that they've had, but because of the people and the character that they have, and the human beings that they are. Um, so yes, is it an obligation to give back? No, but I'm very fortunate, and I've been very blessed in my life to have this platform and this forum to try and be a positive influence in this community, and not just to the kids. Obviously, yes, I want to be a positive influence to the kids, but for everybody and just humanity in general. So my wife does the backpack drive for a Title I school every year, along with the help of Chesapeake Education Foundation, Chesapeake Public Schools Education Foundation. And as far as the All Tidewater game, I just remember how cool it was for myself the first time I was selected to be All Tidewater. I was actually just talking to my son Casey the other night, and he's just finished his freshman year at Great Bridge in freshman season. And I was telling him that for us, the All Tidewater team was bigger than maybe even making All State.
Right.
Because the All Tidewater, that you got that centerfold in the Virginia Pilot, and your picture was in there, and I mean, it's just that whole centerfold was dedicated just to All Tidewater teams. To whereas All State was kind of like in those box scores, and it just had your name written on there. It wasn't really all that publicized. So even though it might have been a greater honor and harder to have happen, being All Tidewater was special. So last year, Claudel Clark did a great job, and Steve Supmiller, they did a great job of kind of kicking off the event and starting it. And this year asked me to be involved. Steve Supmiller asked me to be involved along with Larry Rabama at the Virginia Pilot. And again, knowing my history with the All Tidewater team, I jumped at the opportunity because it is a very, very special moment for these players. They should be proud of themselves. The area should be proud of those players, and they should be showcased. And when I say showcase, you kind of get misconstrued these days. You're thinking it's a showcase for colleges or scouts or whatever. This is truly just to showcase their talent, reward them for the seasons that they had, and allow the fans an opportunity to see the conglomerate of talent on one field together for one night. It is Peninsula Public Schools along with the whole area private schools versus the South Side Public Schools. That may turn into a rivalry, may not. That's not my vision for it. Right. My vision for it is just they all have a mutual respect for each other and go out there and have fun showcasing and being rewarded for the season that they had.
Yes. And Michael, appreciate your time, and just want to wrap up here your involvement here with Team USA baseball. You played there in 96 and 97, and now you're the 18U Team USA manager.
Full circle moment for me. Again, that team, it was the first time I really had that realization that I'm one of the best players in the world, and I can play with the best players in the world. And I was able to go out and have success with that 18U national team for 2 years. And it was just such a huge stepping stone for me and a gateway from my amateur career to my professional career that once I was asked 2 years ago to be the hitting coach, I jumped at the opportunity because I wanted to partake in just a small part of these current players' journeys in that gateway from amateur to whether they're going to go on and play college baseball or professional baseball. And to be the manager this year and kind of have that same type of influence it's an incredible feeling. And it's not about me, it's solely about them. And I just hope to be able to complement their journeys and to jumpstart their careers and kind of give a little bit of wisdom and what my experience was like in both realms.
Right. Yes. And last thing for all the listeners that are out there, especially the kids, playing the game of baseball right now as they get older, but just last few words here to talk to the listeners there with the baseball players, and it might not be the position that you're playing now, might be the position when you get the opportunity to play college or maybe even professional.
Right. Well, look, youth sports was created for camaraderie, um, work ethic, time management, having fun,
Right.
being with your friends, civic rivalries. That's why I think high school baseball is so important, because now with travel baseball, we've kind of lost that civic rivalry. And in high school baseball, you get that back. And it's really fun to see the Western Branch versus Great Bridge and the Great Bridge versus Hickory, that civic rivalry. And that's what's fun with youth sports. So if you're playing youth sports, it doesn't matter if it's baseball, basketball, whatever the sport is, enjoy it. Enjoy it. You only get one shot at this. And yes, winning is important. Of course it is. Winning is important in life, but it's definitely not the most important. And it's definitely not the motivating factor. And if that is the motivating factor, then ultimately it's always going to be empty, because you're going to win games, you're going to lose games. And no matter how many games you win, it's never going to be as fulfilling as the relationships you're able to cultivate throughout life, and just the sheer joy of doing something that you enjoy doing and what you love to do. And as a kid, it's fun to go out and compete and have fun and play with your friends. So hopefully that's your motivating factor. Continue to work hard, because that will be the motivating factor, and just enjoy it. Enjoy your time playing or in whatever you're doing. Enjoy that moment.
Right. Well, Michael, appreciate Ken and Pat and Roland and Wiley, and also
All the people all the channels you went through.
yeah, yes. And even when I introduced you to my dad and my brother there at the Chesapeake Sports Club, appreciate your time that we could have you on this podcast. So thanks again.
No worry, Rags, and thanks for your continued passion for sports in Hampton Roads, and specifically in Chesapeake. So we obviously thank you, and need fans like yourself to continue to promote youth athletes. So thank you.
Sure, no problem. And that's a wrap here with Michael Cuddyer on today. Thanks again.